Welcome to SB&M is Here, the State Bar of New Mexico's official podcast. In this series, we'll discuss topics such as professional development, tools of the trade, and mental and professional well-being. Connecting the legal community across New Mexico, SB&M is here. Hello, everyone. This is Morgan Pettit, and thanks for tuning in to SB&M is Here. Make sure to subscribe on your preferred platform of Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, or the BAR website to receive notifications when a new episode is ready. As always, we do ask if you could pretty please rate and review this in any episode by clicking the survey link on the episode e-blast. We do, of course, love those stars on iTunes or Spotify saying that you like the episode, but we would love your feedback so we can tailor the content to you. I am incredibly excited to continue with another episode from the solo and small firm section, especially as the State Bar of New Mexico is largely comprised of solo and small firms across our great state. You can enjoy each episode independently, or you can listen to them as companion pieces. For this episode, which is also brought to you by the Law Office of Victoria Lucero, LLC, our panelists will discuss the firm culture and operations of a solo and small firm. I'm going to hand it over to our moderator today, who is Deian McBryde, a solo family attorney in the McBryde and McBryde Law. Take it away, Deian.
Welcome back, everyone. I never quite know why we welcome people back on a podcast. We're really the ones coming to you, so maybe you're welcoming us back. But I'm Deian McBryde from McBryde Law. We're a bunch of solo and small firm attorneys here just having a chat today and enjoying your company. I've got George Weeth from Academy Compensation Clinic, Cindy Silva from the Cindy Silva Law Firm, and Christopher Templeman from Smith Templeman. And our next question, we sort of teased it out at the beginning. We said we're going to ask, does your front end match your back end? And of course, there's no one racier than a bunch of lawyers, right? So when you guys heard that, we first talked about it, I know we joked and we had a lot to say, but now that we've talked about it, Cindy, do you want to tell the group, tell the class, what does it mean, does your front end match your back end?
Well, as we sort of discussed this in our meetings about this podcast, in terms of does your operations match your marketing promises or your personal brand? So whatever you're putting out there to the world to see or to potential clients to see is what you're doing behind the scenes matching up with what you're presenting to potential clients.
And George, do you think that that's, I know we all agreed to put it in the podcast, but what's your sense of that? Have you experienced in your career that it's important for the information you're putting out about yourself to match who you actually are, or, is it a 20% value gain or something? What does that mean to make those things match? Or
it's ironic that you would ask the old guy how you're marketing yourself, especially since I've admitted I don't even have a website. I came from the tradition in the practice of law, particularly in Albuquerque, New Mexico, where it's a small enough community, people know each other, and you'd see people at the courthouse, and you'd make friends with other attorneys at bar meetings and stuff, and so you just sort of get your name out there and do a good job, and the cases will come. And as we become a more fragmented and virtual society where we don't have those personal interactions all the time, it's all the more important to actually think about things like branding and how you're going to appear to the world. I'm not sure it's enough just to say I'm going to provide excellent service and perfect representation to all people that come to me. That's a nice mission statement, but that's what everyone is hopefully doing. So in a sense, I think this kind of touches on something that Deian, you said earlier. If your technology limits the people you're bringing in the door in the first place, then you're already putting out a brand, whether you recognize it or not. You're saying to people, if you're not willing to or able to connect with me on a virtual platform, then I am more advanced than you are somehow. So we have to be careful how we present ourselves to the public. In my case, A lot of the people I represent or want to represent are not well-educated, not sophisticated people. They work hard jobs where they get hurt. Many of them, I was shocked when I first started doing this to discover how many of the people I represented dropped out of school before finishing high school. And that was, coming from the kind of background that most of us come from, where we've not only finished high school but college and law school as well. That was sort of a surprise to me to discover that, approximately half the people in APS never really finished school. And so we can't afford to appear to the public that we are above them in some way, or they will not want us representing them. This is the personal connection we were talking about earlier.
Well, that's interesting. I'm going to push back a little bit because I wonder, with technology being as pervasive as it is, I don't know that it's as solid of a marker to say that education somehow matches technological savvy, right? So do you think it's possible that a firm could culturally decide, look, we really need to interact virtually, that's how we're going to do business, and still have a wide economic pool of clients? Same thing, could a firm say, we're really going to differentiate, we want well-educated clients maybe, or we're not going to care. What we really want are clients who aren't going to push us in terms of technology and who want a lot of hand-holding, or who want paper documents or some other thing. I don't want to conflate any of those things as being the same. So I wonder, and I'm just going to send this back to George again, because I feel like I'm a very tech-forward firm, but that doesn't mean I only see wealthy, smart people. I just have clients who are comfortable with technology. So what does that mean when you sort of take that in terms of this front-end, back-end marketing, branding thing?
I guess what I was saying is if you have the capacity, the ability, and the willingness to work with people that are not going to be able to scan a document and submit it to you, you're going to have to go to the post office and pick up the mail every day. Then do you want to create a image to the public that you're not willing or able to do that? I guess by connecting with people by phone, at least at the outset, I'm attempting to convey to the outside world that I'm a rather low-tech guy, and I'm able to talk with them and answer their questions, whether they can type or whether they have a computer or not. I realize almost everybody I deal with today has a smartphone, and they can tap out a text message. And that's a whole other issue getting into accessibility is how do people find my number to start sending me text messages? But they do. And so, yes, you've got to be prepared to respond to all that as well.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because now, of course, I'm thinking, and I think this is a good question for all of us who run our own businesses and our names are on the door, on one level or another, is what's driving it, right? Is it the front end, what you're saying, that's deciding the back end, what you're doing, or is it the way you want to work that defines the way you talk about your business? So, Cindy, I'm going to pop to you with that. What comes first? Is it the chicken or the egg, the front end or the back end? What drives your way of working?
I see them balanced for personally. I don't want to overcommit myself because that just leads to problems and disappointment. I find it frustrating when I'm looking for any particular service, legal or otherwise, and I do my Google search or you might even sometimes call people and you get the frontline people and they're, oh, yes, we do that and we can help you with that and that's part of our service. And then you explore a little further and they really can't help you. And so I guess if I look at it that way, your back end really needs to drive your front end. Otherwise, you're coming close to making misrepresentations, and at the very least, disappointing and frustrating people who are trying to find, the right attorney, the right fit for their issue.
I think that's really insightful, because I would suspect a lot of people starting a firm at any point, particularly maybe if you're younger, you want to say yes to as many things as possible. So Chris, at this point in sort of your career versus the life of your firm, how do you balance what you can do, what you want to do, versus what you say you're going to do? What does that front end, back end look like for you guys?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think similarly to what others have suggested, I think of myself as a helper, and I like the idea of being able to help those people in need, but that can go too far. And so I think that hopefully our philosophy sort of dovetails in a manner that addresses that. And I think that since we're a partnership and I'm a newer lawyer, relatively speaking, and my partner is very experienced, that we probably can handle a greater breadth of potential cases or issues than I could, certainly on my own. And I think that it's a real nuanced thing to be able to understand where you're going to best be able to help somebody out and where you are going to be over promising, or where your front end exceeds your back end or something like that. And as a quick aside, it's funny, I come from a marketing background and have an MBA, and so I actually don't do as much marketing as I anticipated doing. But one of the things when I was building up our firm and coming up with our website and things like that is there's probably a Venn diagram out there of what people are looking for when they look for legal services and what lawyers want to put out to the public, and where the circles overlap is essentially just, what's your phone number, and are you going to be available for me to return my calls or to speak with me in person and things like that. Whereas lawyers really want to talk about, well, I graduated cum laude and all of these achievements I have, and here's how great a person I am. And I think that doesn't always match up exactly well with what people really are looking for. And I think often, from my perspective, it's that sort of personal touch, and that's the type of thing that our firm, maybe as opposed to a real large firm, is able to offer to people. And so we really try and keep focus on that differentiation in particular.
Well, you remind me of, there's a thing that I do that I picked up just from years of working in lots of weird places, but in my consultations or my intakes, I always start by asking the client or the prospect, what are the questions on your mind today? What are the questions you need me to answer by the end of this hour? And what I found with that is it does a lot of things for me. First of all, it kind of tells me what their expectations are. It gives me a roadmap to the conversation. It gets it out from them what they're thinking about, because if I'm going to talk about my credentials and how awesome I am, but they're thinking, I don't understand how community property works, and I need to have that explained because I got this money. So I get all those things out. But the other thing that I didn't really think about until just now when you were talking, Chris, is that it keeps me from selling myself, because I am able to clue in more to what their expectations are, what they want to know. And never, ever, when I've asked them, what are your questions, do they ask me, what was your favorite class in law school, and what's your philosophy on how the universe should work, and and the quality of legal education in America. Like, no one's ever asked me that, right? Because they want to talk about themselves. So that's been kind of interesting. I'd kind of like to round robin with you guys. If you could, I'm going to start this way. If you could change something about the back end of your business in order to tell a different story on the front end, what would that thing be that you might change about your operations that would, be reflected in your marketing? And so sort of a quick hit. So I'm going to just go boom, boom, boom. So George, what would you change about your operations to tell a different story on with your marketing or your promotions?
Wow. Well, I'm really taken by what you just said about asking some open-ended questions at the beginning, because I usually start my interviews with getting the facts. Tell me what happened, and I need to know the name of this company and that adjuster you're dealing with, and all these details. And then the client may never get around to telling me why they thought they needed to talk to a lawyer right now. So I guess changing my operations to present who I really want to be on the front end would be asking more questions of people and talking less.
Cindy?
I think I'm looking at this probably more substantively than operations, but I think a lot about not having all my eggs in one basket, and so maybe part of my enlarging my practice areas to other things that I know how to do that I haven't done as much of, so that I can offer more, and it would sort of increase that front end a little bit.
I think that's interesting, because I think when you expand your substantive knowledge, right, you are expanding an operational capability. And if you expand that capability, maybe you're being able to talk about something else, on the front end. What about for you, Chris? Is there anything in the operation that you think, if I could really dig in and change this thing, it would give us a totally different story, or a newer story, or a different story, or more of a story to tell?
Yeah, I mean, I think honestly what George was getting at struck a note with me, because at some point in the relatively recent, within the last year or so, I attended a CLE, a continuing education course, and one of the speakers made mention of the fact that at every single client intake, he asked the potential client, what are you hoping to get out of this? And so it's really easy to kind of get into a transactional mindset where you're just exchanging facts and whatever. But often in my line of work, I find that people certainly are looking for compensation and, all the regular things, at least that lawyers in my area expect. But also they've been really hurt in ways that they just often want to be heard. And I think that it's easy to fall into the trap of just exchanging information back and forth without really understanding where this person is coming from and what their story is in their own words. And I think that really, particularly as a small firm practitioner, provides me and the client with the ability to kind of understand one another on a deeper level. And so I don't know operations wise, other than making sure that I address those types of narrative kind of topics, what specifically we do, but I try to avoid getting into just the back and forth, provide me the facts. And I think George is right on the money. It's real easy to fall into that trap and then sort of lose sight of what your client really feels about what has happened to them.
The Law Office of Victoria Lucero, LLC offers affirmative and defensive immigration services and special education legal services. Victoria specializes in VA, WA, U visa, and naturalization cases. Victoria also practices special education law and represents parents of special needs children who are seeking an IEP advocate or need help filing for due process against their school district. Clients can call, or referrals can be made to 505-609-8133.
Well, so you bring me to a place, I've said this to you guys quickly and maybe you've had a chance to think about it, but I have this notion or this thesis about culture in a firm, and I feel like culture is how you manifest your values. It's how you operationalize what you really believe in. So I would ask you, Chris, I'd kind of push it back to you. So if you believe in these things, if you believe in getting that narrative out, how is that now a policy or a procedure at your firm so that that value kind of consistently, presents itself in your client interactions?
Yeah, great question. So, I mean, honestly, what I have built over time is an intake form that's the culmination of all of these kinds of concepts. So there are certainly pieces of information that you have to have. You have to know when this incident happened to the client. You have to know who the folks were that were involved. And there's certain kind of must-have things. But I try to build into our intake form, more open-ended narrative type of questions that sort of touch on the idea of, maybe an example actually is better than talking through it. So often I find in a medical malpractice environment that people who feel that they have been hurt by the negligence of their doctors, they feel that they were never heard by the doctor or the hospital or the practitioner. And so it's very important to them that the person that hurt them understand that they were hurt. And also it's very important that they often say things like, if they would have just said sorry, or if they would have come and talked to me afterwards, I wouldn't have had to go here. And I think that that's important because, and I think it's also important to put into your actual forms and at least get some sort of notion of what the client's expectations are, so that later down the road, you don't lose sight of what brought this client to you in the first place, and that it was something just beyond, well, I want a big payday, or I want them to suffer financially for what they did to me, and because I think it's often much more complicated than that.
Yeah, so I'm really hearing you sort of talk about that if you whether it be an intake form or an intake process, that it can gather more nuanced information. I'm even guessing that would probably help in settlement negotiations later if you know what your client really wants, and might give you that sort of sense about it. Okay, well, going from this operations piece of creating your values and describing them, I wonder, with technology being the way it is now, some firms are finding that people can just access a lot of information either from the web or from the firm's website. But we've also talked a lot about, being able to be the delivery source for our clients, and how that kind of figures into our value proposition and our funneling and all of that sort of stuff. So I'm wondering, what do you guys think about this idea of clients, getting either information from your firm or forms from your firm, or filling their own things out, or where does that balance in with actually needing to sit down and talk with you? So, Cindy, do you want to start us off?
Sure. So I start off at this position. I want to help everyone, and I think I often take for granted, the amount of work and time that we put in as attorneys, and how it is that we've come to have this, sort of gulf of knowledge sometimes. It seems second nature, and sometimes I think, well, gosh, it seems ridiculous for somebody to pay me to prepare a power of attorney or a deed or whatever other sort of, in our view, sort of a small legal document or a small matter. And so I often, that becomes part of my pro bono time, is, I'll do favors for people, and I guess I have some, if it's a form that I can pull off of the statutes or the rule book, I'm pretty comfortable providing non-clients or acquaintances with that kind of information. But I do worry about crossing that line where we're supplying people with the with tools that, have we drafted this? Is it a sample that we've prepared in the past? So I'm kind of conflicted by the whole topic here about do-it-yourself and advice, because is it client, non-client? And are you talking about what's billable and not billable? So maybe I'm not sure about the scope of your question, but those are some of my concerns when I think about directing people to resources versus taking on the project and doing it as a pro bono thing.
That makes a lot of sense. George, we're getting close on time, but I want to ask you, because you've brought in this personal element of really, I think, delivering very personal value. What do you think about this new universe of people accessing their own information or filling out forms with the firm online for the firm to respond to later? What does that world look like to you, or what do you think about it?
Well, I'm thinking about creating my own website right now, and that's one of the things I thought would be great. I'll have a questionnaire so I don't have to ask all the detailed fact questions in the interview. I can just review that and get into telling them what they need to know right away. But I realize that a lot of people are trying to thumb this out on a cell phone, and maybe that's not the best way for them to spend their time. But also, you're building a relationship when you're interviewing someone, and if we make efforts to hear them as well as talk to them, we're going a long ways to building that relationship. And ultimately, that's what I think as solos we have to, that's our advantage over the larger firms, is we have the ability to connect with our individual clients and have them believe that they're getting, and know, not just believe, but know that they're getting personalized attention from the lawyer. And when it comes time to get paid at the end, if you've delivered value, and value is not just a result, but the result of having a connection and being heard by your lawyer, that makes it a lot easier to justify the charges that you incur and that they're going to incur paying for your services at the end.
Well, great. Listen, I want to thank all of you guys. This has been a really fun and interesting conversation. And the people who are listening to the podcast don't know that we've had several meetings to get together for this. So I feel like this is a milestone and a fun journey with some people I really, really like. My thanks goes out to all three of you for appearing today. Christopher Templeman from Smith Templeman Law Firm, Cindy Silva from the Cindy Silva Law Firm, and George Weeth from Academy Compensation Clinic. I'm Deian McBryde from McBryde Law. We're all available. You can check us out through the State Bar's website, look any of us up. I'm sure we'd all be open to hearing from you. Some of us, you may have to navigate more technology than others, but it would be great to hear from folks. Please join the solo and small firm section. We'd like to get to know you better. And with that, Morgan, I will give it back to you. Thanks for the gift of this time today.
Thank you for listening. This episode was produced by the State Bar of New Mexico's Member Services Department and Solo and Small Firm section. All editing and sound mixing was done by Blue Sky eLearn. Intro music is by Kevin McLeod at Incomtech. The views of the presenters are that of their own and not endorsed by the State Bar of New Mexico. Nothing said in this podcast is legal advice for you.